good afternoon, Dr. Sarah. So nice to be here with you today.
So good to see you.
Thank you. It's been a very long time since you and I have seen each other in person,
Mhm.
and I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity to talk with you today because over the past 23 years, I've taken my health into my own hands, and I actually have not had any visits to any sort of a medical professional. So when I saw that you were a naturopathic doctor and a functional medicine practitioner, I thought, okay, finally, if I need help, I know who I can contact. So I'm so grateful to have reconnected with you this way.
Well, thank you and congratulations on taking health into your own hands and being successful and healthy and all that. And thank you for all that you do and for having me here. I
Oh,
appreciate
thank you
you.
so much. You're very welcome. So I wanted to interview today about a few things. I know that you have a wonderful website called Break Free Medicine, and people can look that up. And I also know that you have a dedicated website for essential oils, and we will let people know that near the end, Dr. Sarah. So that's okay with you.
Mhm.
Okay. So many years ago, you and I met through your mom, and you have been on quite a journey. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about what your path is in life?
Sure. How I got to where I am, kind of, right?
Yes.
Um, so I started off always wanting to be in medicine since I was little. I actually went through several different shifts in my path. I started out wanting to be a pharmacist. I worked at the pharmacy as a pharmacy intern. And during all of this time, what was happening was I had chronic back pain, really bad back pain, and I had a lot of digestive issues. And Catherine, I would literally take bottles of ibuprofen like with me everywhere, and I probably overdosed just to get through the pain. And and during this time, like I would have to figure out ways where I could just sit or walk or stand where I'd be comfortable. And this was probably from 16 until they found out what was wrong, until I was like 19 or 20. I had really severe disc herniation to the point where it had gotten so bad I had to have emergency surgery. I didn't find it out that it was so bad until I went into, at that time, I was also going into nursing school. So I was going to go into nursing school to kind of save a little money before I went into pharmacy school to get that background. And what ended up happening is I was at my aunt's house and my back literally went out. I couldn't stand and I had to get emergency surgery. So that time I got really, really depressed basically. I was recovering. I was applying for different programs, hoping I could get in. I did get into pharmacy. I was like, do I want to be a PA, a physician assistant? And during this time, my mom was going through menopause and she was struggling. And she found Young Living oils. And she was getting relief and she was telling her friends about it and they were getting relief. I was still working part-time in the pharmacy after I recovered and I was horrified. I was like, these are not FDA approved. Mom, what are you doing? You're gonna harm yourself and other people. The pharmacists were having they're like, what is going on? This is not good, Sarah. And then my mom, knowing me, she brought me this desk reference for essential oils. She's like, Sarah, just look at the science. I'd really like you to try these. And I wouldn't try them. She's like, I really would like you to try these so that you can get some relief. I know that they could help you. I read the whole reference book before I would even touch it. In the meantime, my sister, my aunt, like the family's joining in and I'm watching. And sometimes the proof is right in front of you, but your beliefs are so strong you don't want to see it.
Yes.
That happened to me. And then I read the book and I was like, well, why not? At this point, nothing's working. And mom introduced me to peppermint and she introduced me do you want me to use the names of the actual oils?
Sure.
Yeah, to Joy. Um, and that was the first time I started to feel better. I got actually some relief from the pain. I was applying peppermint, and at that time we were doing pretty acute doses of essential oils. And what ended up happening is I was kind of had a moment where I decided ethically if I could go into a medical field that didn't embrace these different forms of medicine that also came from nature, because I had done a lot of studying. And my mom was seeing a chiropractor at the time, and he was a very holistic chiropractor. He used the oils. So I decided I told him I was going to work for him, basically. Like, I want to work with you. Let's work on these oils together. Let's help your clients and patients. And I want to be your front desk manager, and created my own little job with him. We worked really good. And I discovered literally on a computer one day, I discovered what naturopathic medicine is. Because I was going to be, then I decided I might be a chiropractor, but I was nervous about people practicing on my back. And um, I found that there were doctors that actually focused on the prevention of disease, teaching people how to stay healthy, believed in the healing power of nature, and incorporated natural healing modalities first before pharmaceuticals. And they also had schooling in if there were any interactions or contraindications between herbs and medications. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I was looking for. I literally applied and I was there the next semester.
Oh
I just
my.
knew it. And my goal was, how can I use natural supplements and essential oils with my clients and educate people on the power of these as medicine? Because why doesn't anybody know about them? And how can we incorporate them into medical protocols or wellness protocols? Because they are so powerful. And there was a lot of information out there too that was kind of scare tactics, what I saw. And I wanted to dig into that too, because I saw people applying oils like supposedly they shouldn't be doing with very good results. And there was evidence, you know, from Europe on different ways that people were using oils that was different than in America or the English version.
Yes,
So I'm sorry if this is really long, but that brought me
it's
to
okay.
where I am today and working with other people, and that I have that mind that likes to know how things work too.
Hmm?
So I like to do a lot of writing and research and look at the journals and just keep questioning my biases of, okay, I'm seeing this in practice, is it in the literature, and trying to remain open and honest about essential oils. And
Mhm.
honestly, I still think, if not, like the more research I do, the more amazing they are to me.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
They're my little aromatic friends. I love
Hmm.
essential oils.
Which brings us to the fact that you are now a doctor of, or you say a naturopathic doctor.
Mhm.
Is it the same as a doctor of naturopathy?
It's a little, naturopathic doctors are, I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. The terminology is different in different states because we're licensed state by state. And there's some people that can call themselves a naturopathic or doctor of naturopathy based on online credit courses. So they know a lot about natural medicines. They don't have the clinical experience and the
I
clinical
see.
rotation. And in New York State, we're not licensed as primary care doctors, even though we're trained that way. So I see clients versus patients. So there's legal mumbo jumbo, but I do have
Colin.
an ND degree, and I also have a certification in functional medicine too.
Okay, very good. What does that mean? Functional medicine. How is that different?
Functional medicine goes a little bit, I would say it goes a little bit deeper into biochemical differences in the individual. It's still addressing the root cause of the disease, but it's looking at it from, I would say, a little bit more of a conventional mindset, bringing in all different practitioners into how to incorporate natural medicine alongside conventional medicine, but also appreciating the foundations of health and looking
Yes.
at the different triggers and a holistic approach to why someone might be unhealthy, they provide an outline of how to kind of approach a patient or a client.
Okay, very good. So in that case, you might be working with a team of people. Is that correct? Did I hear you right?
Functional medicine, you don't have to necessarily, but there's all different naturopathic doctors kind of are in their own lane as naturopathic doctors. And then functional medicine kind of brings in all different specialties
Oh, I see.
and they teach a little bit of a different philosophy. Just because MDs have a different philosophy, naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, but we all unite under the functional medicine.
Okay. So as you were explaining your situation and where you came from, uh, everything that you pursued was because of your own life and because of the different situations that you had going on in your life. And I know that when I met you, you had a very different. Well, you were much younger. Number one, you were just a little girl, really, in a way, coming into the world and facing hormonal challenges and all kinds of things. And now you're beautiful. Your skin, your hair. It's very evident that you're very healthy. So I just want to say that. So when I went onto your website, Dr. Sarah, I saw that you had several different areas of life that you help people address when they have challenges. And I'm going to talk about a few of those. The very first one was mood imbalance. And all of us are emotional beings. So, what would someone come to you for? Would that be if they were in a very deep state of depression? Or maybe you could give us a little example of that because it seems to be prevalent in our world today.
I really switched to that being my main focus during COVID. I really got so I really got a taste of how people with mental health diagnoses or psychiatric disorders, I'm putting quotes, were treated very archaic. I feel that when someone comes in with a mood imbalance, whether it be depression, whether it be anxiety, whatever their diagnosis is, it could be a neurological issue, it could be, ADHD, all of these different factors underlying that disorder isn't just symptoms, there's a brain health imbalance. And people, just like any other disease or diagnosis, people could have the same diagnosis but different underlying causes. And unfortunately, so many people in the mental health category are really only given biochemical solutions, medication. Nobody's really looking at how the brain functions, what structurally going on with the brain, and then also the biochemical as well as the metabolic processes that go on in the brain. And all of those determine your mood. And then there's various factors that also influence it. Hormones, environmental exposures, gut brain. We've heard of the gut brain
Yes.
connection. So it was natural. I did a lot of gut work that obviously people would have, or maybe not so obviously, a lot of people with gut issues have brain health issues.
Mhm.
So it's really, I say mood imbalances because the label doesn't matter so much. It's really what's going on kind of under the hood. And I got a lot of my inspiration, and I do a lot of kind of webinars and trainings from Dr. Amen, who uses PET scans. And he actually goes in and looks at what areas of brain are over functioning or under functioning and can determine using those along with functional medicine modalities, what are the best interventions for the person. I do virtual consults. I don't have a PET scanner, but I use different questionnaires as well as their health history to say, well, this part of your brain seems like it's under functioning, right? So maybe someone has a low prefrontal cortex activity and here where your executive functioning is, they're having a hard time with focus. So we might do different things to help with that. Or, maybe they're just to have a lot of emotional issues. All of that would determine kind of where I would start with someone while doing the foundations of health.
Okay. So This is kind of a personal question because there was someone in my family who had extreme and we lost him at extreme mood imbalance.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's why I was particularly interested. And I think there are many of us out here who knows one person, at least in their life, who's suffering that way.
Mhm.
Uh, I'd like to ask you if you have a personal thought on why this has increased so tremendously over the past, say, 25 years or even longer, that these sorts of brain issues are affecting us like this. What's your thought about that?
There's so many factors that could come at play and so many theories. There's the metabolic theory, there's the environmental theory, like social media,
Mm,
technology, disconnection from ourselves. We're so busy on the computer and focusing on kind of virtual connection. People have lost actual human connection. I think that's a factor. I think environmental comes at play. I think hormones, I think our food supply. I think there's so many
mm,
different reasons, but I think the greater kind of spiritual angst of people just not feeling
mm.
connected, right?
Yes,
Because everything comes down from, I think we talked about this a little bit before our talk.
yes.
I do believe that everything comes down, from emotional and spiritual and kind of manifests in the body. And there's been a lot of upheaval, especially in the last, from the pandemic, a lot of mental
Yes.
health issues arise. And
You said, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and it saddens me, and that's why I'm hope, we have everybody here that uses oils as part of the solution already, because you're like a walking
Mm.
diffuser, which is amazing, right? The more walking diffusers we get because of that instantaneous shift with a smell, especially if it's a pleasant smell, it's going to help
Yes.
somebody get out of the emotional state that they're in, at least, for that moment. And about 90 minutes later, because that's how long the oils stay in our body, have effects longer. But yeah.
90 minutes, you said. Okay, everybody heard that now.
It's an
This
estimation by the time we metabolize and all of that. Usually, from what I've read from a few studies, it's about 90
okay.
minutes and about 20 minutes to get fully in all the cells.
Okay, good. We'll talk a little bit about that more in just a minute because one of the main thoughts overriding things right now is do you help people come off any types of particular pharmaceuticals they might be on that they can't seem to break away from?
I do have people now. I do work with people's primary care because again, I'm not a primary care provider in New York, but yes, I help
Okay,
people with their prescribing physician taper, and I do use
good.
essential oils and supplements and nutrition lifestyle factors with that. Depending on the medication, some are harder than others to get off of because the brain kind of it's neurologically primed for that biochemical set point.
Let's
So you kind of
see.
have to treat the brain up front with a lot of nourishment. And the cool thing with the essential oils is they work on what we call neuroplasticity, which is changing the neuronal pathways in the brain. So if they're going, Dr. Ben Perkis is great with explaining this in his aroma freedom technique. I also introduce my clients to that, but it's basically changing the way that our brain's pathways are and making the connection stronger. And the cool thing with essential oils is I could go on forever. Just stop me if I go on a little side rail here. But they help with neurotransmitters balance. They help with the function of the brain, right? So they help the different brain waves patterns in the brain. They help with all the underlying issues that could be related to brain health. So they're going to help balance our hormones. They're going to help do all these things, act as antioxidants, calm down or modulate different inflammatory pathways. They're doing that all at the same time. That's why I love using them with brain issues.
Okay. Now,
I,
while we're on brain issues, let's move right into something that I know we've talked about a little bit, And that's it. You have a passion to really reach more people, to be able to reach more people at an affordable price.
Mhm.
And let's face it, you have put a lot of your life and a lot of your time, you've invested tremendously in your life to help others. And so, in that scenario, we would expect that, if you're going to help us, that there's a fair trade for that. But I know you are also doing some groups, or that you would like to do groups. And one of them is about the brain. Would you give us a little more information about that?
Yeah, I'm going to be launching that soon, which I've been saying for months. So I know I'm going to be using essential oils to get over that block. But I totally have this passion, like you said, for brain health and to help people because our brain determines our thinking and our thoughts determine what our life ends up being, right? So people that are stuck can't move forward. And even with just like doing lifestyle changes or maybe even wanting a goal, they can't get there. They're doing maybe all of the emotional work or the spiritual work, but they might not have the foundations for how to get their brain optimally function. So what my program does is it's going to start with at the level of the brain and the mindset, and then teach the person in groups because again, we're so isolated. It won't just be me, but I want other people supporting each other on this journey. We're going to be working towards where's kind of their weakest link as far as in the different lifestyle factors and giving people resources on how to do that. But the main focus everyone's going to be going through is how do we get our brain at optimal functioning? So we're going to talk about essential oils and brain health supplements to get there. The
Beautiful.
You need the nutrition too. I mean, the essential oils really obviously can shift those emotions, but you need the building blocks on what makes the brain healthy. You need the essential fatty acids and
Mm.
the different precursors to neurotransmitters, the different minerals, the different vitamins. So all of that is needed for an optimally functioning brain.
Okay. Will that also include looking at things like the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, the hypothalamus? Will you be going into
The,
those sorts of things?
the,
Uh,
the hormones, we'll touch upon that briefly, but it's more just a basic foundational course. Do you mean how the pituitary and the hypothalamus impact the hormones and the neurotransmitters? We'll
yes.
touch upon that a little bit, yeah.
Okay. And also, I'm very excited because I've been reading a lot of information about the pineal gland. And, that seems to be well, of course, all of them are important. But I know that Dr. Young talked about that quite a bit in the early years. I was studying with him. He talked about, keeping the pineal gland clean so that your spiritual life
Mhm.
can come into alignment as well. So you mentioned the spiritual life, and I know you have uh, the belief that if your spiritual life isn't, if you're not connected, we'll say it that way, then it may be a little more difficult to maintain the healing. Would you agree with that?
I do. And spiritual can be what anybody believes. It doesn't have to be one religious necessarily, but it's just this connection to something greater than ourselves that gives us comfort or connection. It can be nature. But if we feel like we're alone and isolated in this big world, they have done studies that people that are more spiritual or religious actually have better health too. Part
Mhm.
of that is a community and the shared aspect. And I do feel when people feel disconnected and alone, that creates a lot of negative biochemical
Mm,
cascades in our body. Just
mm.
that thought.
Yes, it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Um, well, okay, so of course you have mental health on your website, and that's part of what we've been talking about, obviously. Digestive and celiac disease. Though there are so many digestive issues, would you just touch on that a minute, please? What are some
Yeah.
of those issues and, maybe how you can help with?
Yeah. Irritable bowel syndrome is a big factor. People might have heard of small intestinal bowel overgrowth. celiac, autoimmune, IBD, irritable bowel disease. All of these are growing rapidly, and I think it's related to a lot of the chemicals that we're using in our food and that we're exposed to, as well as the emotional component. The gut and the brain are connected through this vagus nerve, which kind of acts like the signaling nerve between the gut and the brain. It's kind of like the superhighway. And that's our rest and digest nerve. It's mainly responsible for that. But yeah, I myself has celiac, and I didn't know it until I went to naturopathic school, and I couldn't figure out why I was getting so many skin reactions to different foods. I was having constant pain in my gut every time I eat. And I mean, that's an autoimmune response in the belly to gluten or wheat products. And I'm half Italian. So
Mm.
that was rough. I had to do a lot of, now it's easier because gluten-free it kind of became trendy for a long time. And I think now they know part of the reason why so many people react to gluten is related to the glyphosate spraying and how it
Yes.
changes the wheat, because a lot of people say, well, I go to Europe and I can eat wheat over there, or not so up
Oh,
here.
interesting.
And that I think is part of the reason. And I know there's also like einkorn or ancient wheat that
Yes.
people with gluten sensitivities can sometimes do better with. And there's also the hybridization, the change of the amino acid structure and how that. So there's so many different non-food stuffs that we're eating today that, I mean, hopefully that's going to be changing soon. But
Yes.
there's so much stuff that's been going on that we've been putting in our body that's hard for our guts to process. And then when we don't get the nutrition that we need from the depleted soils and everything that's going on in the world and all the stress, because when we're in stress, we can't rest and digest, we get gut issues, and then that impacts our brain. So
So here we are then. It sounds like so far everything relates back to our food, to our habits, our eating.
I think that's a big part, but I also think the emotional part is huge too. Like our stress response and what we think is a
Mm.
big player, because just a change of a thought can change our biochemistry in an instant. I could say
Mm.
fire, people would have a biochemical cascade. I could mention a stressful thought, and if you're sitting there focusing on something that's stressful in the back of your head as you're working or going throughout your day, it's just kind of creating this low dose stress hormones in our systems. And I think because of the way we're exposed to technology and have to be so instantly on point all the time,
Mhm.
I believe that's a big factor too. So I think there's a lot of reasons, but if we're not getting the basic nourishment that our body needs, a lot of people are on restrictive diets or they're cutting out different foods. That too, to try to
Yes.
be healthy, can sometimes backfire as well because they're nutrient deficient and can even get disordered eating patterns as a result.
Mhm. So in your practice, if I were to come visit you and I'm your client, and do you have resources on where I can look for, let's say, clean food or clean supplements and things like that? You do. So
I have,
that,
yeah,
hmm?
I did a whole series on kind of greening up your life, the importance of organic, even if people don't buy that it's got more nutrients, it does in certain areas. What it doesn't have is most important. So you don't have those chemicals that are clogging up your receptor sites, right, and causing inflammation in your body. So I think it was a 2 or 3 part video series on that. And
Okay,
then
I'm going
it
to
has
look
this
for
one.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look for that. I did watch one of your videos that I was thought was quite interesting. I believe it was on the digestive system.
Oh,
Um,
I just did one in the
yes,
digestive system.
very,
But
very good, very informative.
thank
What
you.
I love about you, Sarah, one of the things I love about you is the pre-information that you give. Doing things like that is very helpful for people because, as you well know, probably better than I, many people have taken their health into their own hands.
Mhm.
And we're all very intelligent. We have worked on learning since going to maybe someone that didn't help us, we'll say it that way, wasn't able to help us with their training. We took our own lives into our own hands. And So the fact that you have things for people out there to begin their education and start to really look at their own lives, I think that's key for what you offer, because then you can take them once they decide and they're ready. Now, where do I go from here? And that's when they might be contacting you, or when they just can't seem to find the right answer, something's missing. Like you just said to me, chemicals block the receptor sites on our cells. Well, I knew chemicals affected us, but I didn't know that's what they did. They actually block receptor sites. Is that right?
They can, there's kind of different mechanisms, it's kind of generalizing it, but
Okay.
they can alter the receptors. There's some that are endocrine disruptors, so they affect our hormones.
Okay.
They fit into
Yes.
different estrogen receptors and they cause either higher or lower estrogen or imbalances
Okay.
and reproductive cascades. So they fit into different receptors in our cells and they can cause these different chemical cascades that normally a cell that's healthy wouldn't do. Because it's your little cells have
Okay.
receptors and they're looking for different signals. What do I do next? Right. And then we have all these different things swimming around that we're exposed to that attach there. And they should be a good fit, and some of these chemicals look very similar to our hormones or look very similar to inflammatory
Okay.
mediators. And that's where you get stuck. And after a long period of time, some of these plastics and pesticides can actually coat up the cells and the cell membranes. And that's where their lipid membrane, it's harder for the cells to signal to each other. That's where you get a lot of the neurological issues too. So,
Hi.
yeah, the cool thing with essential oils is they're lipid soluble, right?
Right.
So they can
Right.
go into the cellular membrane and help clean up things.
I think isn't that lemon oil, if I'm if I may say so?
The
One of
ones
the
with,
oils.
yeah, because the terpenes are big for that too.
Okay.
Terpenes in general, essential oils have terpenes.
Yes.
Did you get trained with David Stewart?
I had
To
a
have
little bit of training.
some of the oils help with the cellular receptors.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
sesquiterpenes and the monoterpenes are what I was working with quite a bit because I was doing the work on my own emotional body and using cedar wood and certain things I don't need to go into now. But
Oh,
uh,
that's
we
interesting.
were, yeah, we were taught that oils that were high in monoterpenes were able to reverse the spin of the RNA on the DNA template. Is that correct, the way I'm saying that, Sarah?
I'm pretty sure what he taught. Yeah, it
Yeah,
might be DNA repair,
yeah. The ribonucleic acid
or was it RNA?
RNA, he was
Okay.
talking about how the cedar wood could help reverse trauma,
Okay.
erase trauma at the cellular level, and then sesquiterpenes, uh, oils high in sesquiterpenes, would help to reprogram it. Of course, there's other things to go along with that. That's not just doing the oil. There's an intention behind it and a very uh, strong focus on what you're doing. So we won't need to go into that. I'm sure
Great.
you have your own program on that.
Well, you just remind me, I want to go back and look into that because I learned that so long ago. And then I get stuck into kind of like the literature. And sometimes you
Yes,
forget some of the other information that you learned. But
yes,
I mean, I think Gary Young was one of the first that talked about how, we have this information that sesquiterpenes cross the blood-brain barrier and nobody's paying
yes.
attention.
Yeah, I
And
remember that.
I always think of him saying that. And I'm like, hey guys, everybody's like talking about all of these fears of neurological diseases, and we have something that crosses the blood-brain barrier and can help our neurological function. So
Yes, it's a wonderful thing.
yeah.
Yes, I mean, I know very little about that sort of stuff. I do have a wonderful chemistry book by Dr. David Stewart, and I refer to that quite often when I'm unsure what I'm doing, having not had any formal training. So I appreciate your training, um, for sure.
You don't give
Okay, so
yourself enough credit, Kathryn. You know so much.
well, I've learned from experience. Thank you for saying that. I've learned from experience. You know something? we all need to be validated and make sure we really know what we say we know.
True.
Okay, now I want to talk a little bit. Now, one of the big issues we see today are hormones in women's health. Wow, that is big. Could you do you do a lot of that? Do you have classes that you teach on that? I know it's just one of the things that you offer, but it's so big. Are there any places we can go to take a look at what how you feel about that?
Probably the best place to go is my blog because I have videos and I also was co-hosting the Essential Oil Revolution podcast for a while. And there was a couple of podcasts I did on hormones and essential oils. And then I also
Okay.
interviewed Dr. Anna Kabeka. She's known as a girlfriend doctor. She's a board certified, triple board certified OBGYN.
Oh my,
And
wonderful.
yeah, so she went through some of the oils and different
Okay.
aspects of hormone balance. But again, related, if we go back to the cool thing with naturopathic and functional medicine is you could have all of these different symptoms that come up as women's hormones or brain health imbalances or digestive issues. What we want to do is get to why. Why is it off? And then that brings us back to all of the basic foundations for health, right? You talked about it, food, we're not moving enough, stress, are we sleeping,
Hmm.
technology, all of these underlying factors are going to affect everything else. And for hormone balance, when we're looking at the different phases that women go through, those different hormones, the estrogen, the progesterone, but also the other hormones and how our neurotransmitters affect those hormones all impact if we're going to have different hormonal symptoms. And then we have the thyroid, which because of all of the different things we're exposed to, because of the nutrient deficiencies, can go off and it's related to estrogen. So there's all these different interplays. Hormones is like a web of different, they all intercept and interact with each other because they all feedback to each other. There's a feedback loop.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, so I would like for you to just tell us again where we can find that. Say that one more time. We
it's
can
at
find it.
breakfreemedicine.com or dr-lubisco.com. I just say breakfreemedicine.com because it's easier. And just click on the blog and podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Blog link. I did see that. So thank you. I will do that because I'm going to be looking there. Okay, some of the other things I'm going to move right through this because we're getting close to time. You do offer individualized nutraceutical, herbal, and essential oil support, which we've heard throughout this whole time. And so there are some things when we say nutraceutical, does that mean in a layman's terms, a
Yes.
supplement of some sort?
The
Okay.
high
And
quality.
a high quality supplement. And that's what we're looking for. Obviously, we all want that. And so you have that information. Body acceptance and intuitive eating. Wow, wow, wow. I love that one. Now, before I'm going to have you talk, I want to quote something. Now, you said, and I'm quoting, it's about balance and adding in foods that are pleasurable. Okay. And when I saw that, I said, okay, I can have my cookies, but I can't have my cookies. I do eat cookies, but my timing is off or something. So, Dr. Sarah, if I came to you and I said, well, I still want to eat my cookies and I want to have my ice cream, but also we recognize the ingredients in those things. So how can you help me with that in about a 2 to 3 minute here?
Well, if depending on if someone had disordered eating patterns or if they had dieted for a
Okay.
long period of time, which are most women, sometimes they need additional support. I am a health at every size anti-diet, which is totally different than most of my naturopathic and functional medicine colleagues. I had tried to help people with quote weight loss for like about 6 years, and what I found is it made them miserable, scared of food, restrictive,
Mm,
and they lost their intuition and balance of food, right? They were scared that cookies were the enemy. Um, no. I mean, yes, there are things in foods that may not be optimal for our bodies, but if we restrict something, the more that we restrict something, whether it be a physical restriction or an emotional restriction, whatever that attachment is to that food, it creates stress in the body and it causes people to lose connection. And then they end up eating everything else that they feel is healthy instead of just having the darn cookie, and then allowing themselves other nutrients to bring in to balance the sugar and to balance the other aspects that, if you think about it, when people have cookies and we used to have this thing with cookies and milk. Like why?
Yes.
Right? Because if you have the cookies, you got that sweet taste, and then you have the fat and the protein of the milk to balance that out. Now we got all those
I
chemicals added in and
see.
all that stuff. So how would I tell my clients to do this? We would look at foods that are specific for helping whatever issue they have. So if they have a brain health disorder, we go like, oh, do you like blueberries? Yeah, I like blueberries. Okay, great. We're going to add in blueberries. And oh, I still want my cookies. Okay, that's great. So I want you to have, maybe while you're doing that, just notice how your body feels, give yourself unconditional permission, and maybe balance that out with some protein or some healthy fats with that. And then what ends up happening is food loses its power of fear, and you start to notice what feels good in your body and what feels correct. And you start to naturally find what works for you. And you don't think of how much power, I'm saying this in kind of as a like, think of how much power, because women were most affected by diet culture. Think how much more women could do in the world if they were less obsessed about calorie counting in their food. If they were well fueled, well fed, well nourished, strong women, right?
Yes.
That we're just focusing on how do I bring nutrients and nourishment into my body.
Yes. That's a
So,
beautiful
so
answer.
that's what I would say. You got the cookies, so you got your sugar and your carbs taken care of. Now, how can we get the rest of these foods into you? And then maybe what you'll end up doing is being like, I don't feel good on this much sugar anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make these in a homemade form. But at the same time, you still give yourself permission to eat the packaged form because it's okay. Because if it's not okay, then you get the mindset of it's not okay. And some reason there's this mortality with food that then you're a bad person if you eat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we want balance. We want to be able, there was one of my mentors said, if your patient can't go out and have a hot dog and a soda once in a while and not be okay, then you're not doing your job. We should be able to
Oh,
have some form of balance, and maybe our body should be able to allow some sort of toxicity to pleasure and to fit in with the society we're in. At the same time, right, there's these alternating yin and yang. We also need to be aware of that we don't want to just be feeding our body chemicals, and there's things we need to do to bring awareness that that's not great, that we're getting bombarded with chemicals in our food.
well, thank you. Because as you were saying that, I'm thinking, gosh, you're putting the power right back into the person's hand, but you're guiding them as to making sure they're aware, being
Yeah,
conscious if they eat that cookie
I've had
and how they're feeling.
yeah, people can get like with all of this tracking and people are losing touch of their actual hunger. It's not okay to be hungry. Now there's all this fasting, like
Mm.
suppress the hunger, suppress. What that does is it brings us to the outside for the answers again, rather than
Oh,
accepting the innate healing power and potential of the body and what Mother Earth does. We will never know enough biochemistry or have enough information from the outside to fully appreciate what goes on in these chemical, emotional, spiritual
mm.
bodies of ours, right? So the more we can bring it back to ourselves, like you said, you haven't seen a doctor for 23 years. I think that's great. Most
Well,
people
thank you.
wouldn't, but
No,
I mean, if you're
yeah.
healthy and you're strong, um, really that's the ultimate goal, is to bring people back to where they know their own bodies and when they know they need to get help.
Yes, thank you. And that is very important. I agree. And it's not that I don't consult or I never say to anyone that they shouldn't, because we all know in our own hearts what it is we need.
Sure.
But having you who's been trained uh, is really key because you believe in the holistic methods. And that's what we're missing in our medical practices, many medical practices today of what we might consider our MDs. Although I know there's great, great, great MDs out there now that
Mhm.
are also now looking at nutrition and all that. But
Mhm.
so, okay. Um, you also said food is a form of nourishment and joy, and it has so many healing qualities. I love that because, again, your take on dieting seems to be the right way to go because it just makes us ashamed when we're feeling overweight or so.
And it suppresses our light, right? It
Yes,
suppresses
it
our light. If
does.
we're focused on what we're doing wrong and we feel shameful about how we're trying to feed ourselves and get ourselves through our busy schedules or whatever, if it's something's bringing us comfort, and if we're judging that at the same time, then how are we gonna we're gonna feel so bad we're not gonna pursue our goals and get our light,
Mm,
you know?
I love that. Yeah. So I kind of see you as a woman who helps people not only get healthy but discover their light again.
Well, thank you.
Let's put that in there. You have that sort of aura, shall I say, about you. So it's beautiful. Okay. When you do talk to people, I noticed that you said that it's important to take in the emotional aspect of a person when you're uh, designing their food program, perhaps we could call it, or designing the nutrients from the food that one needs. I thought that was very interesting, the emotional aspect. So maybe the fact that I like a cookie may indicate something deeper that you will look at and you would help me with. Could possibly be
Yeah, you
a
might have,
lack of,
or you
I
might
don't
have
know.
a connection, an emotional connection to when you went over to your grandma's, you guys made cookies together. And that aspect of what you're bringing into your body is so much deeper than the biochemistry breakdown of the what the nutrient profile is and what our biochemistry does with it. They've done studies that when people eat under stress and when people eat under pleasure, you actually produce different enzymes and different
Really?
biochemical pathways. Yes, they have.
That's very interesting.
And that people who intuitively eat actually have better body acceptance, and they also have better, I believe it was better health parameters, but I can't remember off the top of my head which ones they were. But they also had less disordered eating patterns too.
My goodness, that's so good to know. Why is it that when I was growing up, these things didn't seem very important, in my generation, which I'm probably even older than your mom, I have a feeling. But now we have so, so much of it. And of course, I know there's many, many factors, so we
Yeah.
don't need to go into that. One of the things I want you to talk about is what is biochemical and genetic polymorphisms? That's
Oh,
also there
yeah.
on your site.
That's just the difference in that in our enzymes. There's different genetics where people might have different variations in the way that the enzymes work in the body. So people probably heard of MTHFR, that's a folate receptor. Some people can process folate better than other people, and that impacts our neurotransmitters, our immune system. There's also liver detoxification enzyme processes. So if someone has a problem with a specific enzyme, like a COMT, they might have a hard time breaking down hormones, but that's also their stress hormones. That's also their environmental hormones. So it affects
Oh,
everything else. So some doctors run these genetic polymorphism tests to see if people have a harder time with detoxification, hormone balance, immune system, inflammation balance. So that's what that is.
okay. And are you able to test for that?
There is some, I need an authorizing physician to do that, and there are
Okay.
sometimes I do run those tests.
Okay,
A
very
lot of
good.
times I can tell from health history people who are sensitive, but
Okay,
yeah.
because it seems like if we didn't know that, we just wouldn't know it if we didn't
Hmm.
check it.
Yeah.
How about blood work? Can you do blood work? for us.
That's where their primary care comes into.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you could take the tests and read them and
Yes.
help them interpret those things.
Yes.
Okay. Because it seems that speaking to someone like you would be very different than speaking to a medical doctor who gives you, 5 minutes and then prescribes his,
Yes. Depending
you
on
know.
what the client wants, I sometimes do whole lab write-ups. So I'll go through each section of their lab and explain what it is and also explain the difference between what's normal based on lab ranges, which are based on unhealthy individuals and finding the average, and what actually they found in some research that's a healthy level to have, and then how that relates back to their particular struggle. And then that would be that would constitute a lab review. Some people just want me to look at their labs, do my little computing in my head and tell them, how to update their supplements. They don't want all that information. So I do,
Yes.
yeah.
When will we be able to get a peek into that? I'm going to hold your feet to the fire right now.
Oh, I don't have a set date, but probably within the next few months, I'm going to be providing a webinar where you can learn more information free for everyone so that they get something even if they can't join the
Okay.
program. And then there'll be information on how to join the program. And I'm probably going to keep it to a specific number just so that there can be group interactions and then just open it up at different times of the year. I don't want
Oh,
it to
very
just be
nice.
where like I'm just lecturing because I've been in group programs where that's the case and then people kind of they don't get all that they could if they're not interacting with their peers that are going through it.
Sense. Now, I'd like to, it's six, we've been here almost an hour, but we were speaking the other day, Sarah, you were talking about helping people reach their full potential. And, I mentioned it in a different way. You were saying how you would like to help them remove the blockages. And I said to you, oh, you mean raise their frequency? And I remember you said, yes, yes, that's exactly it. So,
Yeah.
we're just using different terminology, but it's the same thing. Your goal, I see that, just to wrap up, is to help people reach their highest potential, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and then perhaps even financially in the world, socially in the world. So the work you do is very, very important. What would you like to leave people with in this interview?
I was thinking when you said that if somebody is unhealthy, they really only have one goal, and that's to feel better. And I believe that everybody can feel better. And I do believe that there's so much fear out there in the world about our physical bodies that it makes people feel disempowered. They don't understand how much power that is within them and the power of the innate design that our bodies want to be well. It's not, our bodies are not the enemy. There are little signals when symptoms are uprising, it's just our body's form of communication. And finding somebody that can decode that and act as a detective with you if you're lost, maybe because you do have too many
Mhm.
fears or you don't have that belief that you can be well, find somebody that does believe you can be well, has a knowing to help you remove the fear and the blocks so that you can be better.
Oh, that's beautiful sentiment right there. Thank you so much. So I think that at this time, we will go ahead and close the interview. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking this time with us. You are a very, very busy woman. How do people reach you?
Yeah,
You want to
probably
give the websites now?
probably the best way is through the website.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's breakfreemedicine.com and then getoiling.com/Sarah Lobisco. That's
Okay.
my Young Living website.
That's awesome. Very good. Thank you so much for your help today, Sarah.
Thank you for
And
having me, and thanks for all
we'll
you
talk
do.
again.
Oh, sure we
Yes.
will.
And I'm going to make sure that I get people over there to watch those free videos that you're doing. There's plenty out there for us to educate ourselves. And then if we want to take it further, to schedule an appointment with you. And I'm sure they can find out all your fees and all of that online. I know a consultation is a very affordable, it's very affordable. And that's where you would start with people. So I encourage people to do that. And
Thank
thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate you.